The story begins with a violent storm, for men have been lost at sea for the past 13 hours, clinging to their overturned boat, desperately trying to survive. They keep repeating to themselves they must stay strong and never give up. It all started a week earlier in Florida. Nick works as a personal trainer at a big training camp where he's close friends with NFL players Marquis and Corey. They train hard, but there's always laughter and jokes during their workouts. One night, everyone gathers for dinner with their families. Nick's best friend Will arrives late and reveals he's just lost his job. To cheer him up, the friends invite him on a fishing trip the following weekend. On Saturday morning, Will shows up at Nick's house very early, making so much noise that Nick has to get up. He takes charge in the kitchen and quickly makes 40 sandwiches. Then Will and Nick head to Marquis's house together, where they see the boat for the first time. Officially, it's built for 11 people, but to feel it looks a bit small. Marquis's house is messy because he's preparing to move. He admits he doesn't want to go to Oakland, it's far from the sea, and he can't imagine life without the ocean, which feels like home to him. But his job gives him no choice. After an emotional goodbye with his family, the four finally set out. At the pier, they talk about the weather, aware of an approaching storm. They believe they'll be back before it reaches their area. They put their phones in plastic bags to protect them from water, knowing there will be no signal out at sea. Will seems anxious, but Marquis assures him the boat has a radio. A few hours later, Nick's mom wakes up and sees a storm warning on the news. She tries calling Nick, but he doesn't hear the phone. There's loud music, chatter, and excitement on the boat. At first, they fish in one spot, but later decide to move farther into the deep sea for better luck. After about 4 hours, Corey catches a huge fish, while Will's line gets tangled in the boat. Nick starts feeling seasick, but once he recovers, he begins to understand why Marquis finds the ocean so peaceful and even feels philosophical. Then thunder rumbles in the distance and dark clouds fill the sky. They decide it's time to head back. Corey tries to pull up the anchor, but it gets stuck again. The four work together to free it, but it won't budge. As thunder grows louder, they tie the rope to the boat and Marquis starts the engine. The anchor weighs the boat down on one side, causing it to tilt. Marquis pushes the engine harder and water starts splashing in, yet the anchor still doesn't move. Suddenly, a massive wave hits the boat, throwing all four men into the sea. Battling the waves, they swim to the surface and see their boat flipped upside down. After a desperate struggle, they reach it and try to turn it back over, but it won't move no matter how they push or change angles. Will guesses the anchor is still pulling it down. Marquis dives underwater to reach the rope, while the others hold his clothes to stop him from drifting away. He uses the propeller to cut the rope and comes back up. They try again to flip the boat, but it stays upside down. It's been almost 5 hours now. The men cling to the overturned hull. Marquis remembers there are life vests inside the boat, but their wet, heavy clothes make swimming difficult. Nick tells him to keep the clothes on to avoid losing body heat, but Marquis takes them off and dives in. As soon as he opens the hatch, water rushes in, pulling the boat down further, but he manages to close it just in time and comes back with one vest. Then Will dives in and brings out the rest of the vest. Marquis goes back again and retrieves the flares. Corey tries to find food but fails because it's too dark. Just then, they spot a distant ship and start yelling while firing a flare, but the ship passes without noticing them. They try to stay hopeful, joking lightly with each other to keep spirits up. Nick dives back and, using the light of the flare, finds the plastic bag with their phones. They try calling 911, but there's no signal. Meanwhile, Nick's worried wife calls his mother. Together they decide it's time to call for help. At that moment, a police officer at the pier finds their parked car, an empty boat trailer, and informs the Coast Guard. Search operations begin. Back at sea, the waves keep knocking them off the boat, but they cling to it each time and help each other climb back on. Without clothes, Marquis is freezing, and Nick reminds him that they still have each other's strength. The rain stops, and they think the storm may be over, but suddenly a huge wave crashes down again, hurling them all back into the ocean. They can't see or hear one another over the thunder. Eventually, they regroup but can't find the boat. After searching, Corey spots it adrift and climbs onto it, calling the others over. Marquis reveals he's cut his leg badly and needs help moving. Another wave hits, submerging them all again. After a harsh battle, they climb up once more. It's now been over 10 hours at sea. Corey tries to lift their morale, but Marquis weakens, saying if he has to die, he'd rather die at sea. Nick refuses to accept it, reminding him of his family. Marquis starts hallucinating, claiming to see his daughter by the boat. The others realize hypothermia is setting in and gather around him, lighting another flare for warmth. 20 hours have passed, rain pours again. Marquis keeps slipping into the water, and Will struggles to hold him up. In the struggle, Marquis accidentally punches Will, knocking him overboard. Nick hauls Will back up while Corey holds Marquis tight. Later, Marquis slips again, and the three of them combine their strength to pull him up. At the Coast Guard office, the team searches for any SOS signal. The wives call to report their husbands missing, and officers confirm their abandoned car matches Nick's group. Captain Timothy orders aircraft to start the search. Pilots take off, but visibility is near zero and the storm has disrupted radar. Meanwhile, the wives search Marquis's old GPS device, hoping his favorite fishing spot coordinates are stored inside. Just when Timothy calls to say the planes will have to return, they find the GPS and send the coordinates. The system reveals the area is near a previous shipwreck, which the wives confirm the men had talked about visiting. Timothy redirects aircraft to that location. On the boat, the friends tell tell Marquis to drink rainwater. The waves are stronger now, knocking them off again and again. Corey starts feeling unusually hot, and Will reminds him hypothermia can cause that illusion, urging him to control his breathing. Suddenly, another wave throws Marquis into the water. Too weak, he doesn't surface. Will also falls in. Corey almost slips, but Will climbs back up and saves him. Panicked, Nick dives in searching for Marquis, but can't see anything through darkness and huge waves. He resurfaces, defeated. The three cry out in grief, realizing Marquis is gone. Shocked, Corey lashes out and pushes Will, but Will climbs back up and hugs him. At that moment, a Coast Guard aircraft passes overhead. Nick turns on his phone flashlight, and they all scream, but the pilots can't see them and prepare to turn back. One crew member glimpses a faint flash of light, but the others dismiss it as reflection. Another wave pushes them far away. Back on shore, the wives get word that the search has been temporarily suspended because of weather. They hold each other's hands, refusing to lose hope. At the Coast Guard office, Timothy contacts a nearby ship called Tornado for assistance. The commander immediately wakes his crew to begin scanning the waters. By morning, only Nick and Will remain clinging to the boat after the last massive wave. They keep shouting for Corey, but he doesn't respond. Will says Marquis and Corey were physically stronger than them, yet they didn't survive. He begins to lose faith. Nick tells him to put on clothes for warmth, but Will refuses to go back inside the boat. As they argue, two sharks begin circling the wreck, and they climb to higher ground on the hull, terrified. They assume the sharks are attracted by the fish smell from their earlier catch. Because of the rocking boat, Will's prepared sandwiches float away. They watch helplessly. They can't swim out because of the sharks. With nothing left to do, they start talking again. Will brings up deep topics: eternity and faith. Nick says he isn't an atheist, but doesn't understand how to pray to the same God who led them into this hell. As he vents his anger, Will tells him not to give up on faith now. Nick hugs him and promises he won't give up on anything. Together, they repeat their mantra again: they're strong, and they won't quit. The media begins reporting missing NFL players, while the Tornado ship continues searching, though visibility remains poor. Nick's wife informs his parents that the search has been delayed again. Frustrated, Nick's mother storms into the Coast Guard office, yelling at Timothy. He explains he can't risk more lives, but promises to resume the search as soon as possible. He tells her to follow her heart. If she believes her son is alive, she must not lose hope. Back at sea, Nick and Will are thrown overboard again, but manage to climb back. Then Nick gets an idea. He dives down and pulls on engine cables until they snap. He says they should tie themselves to the boat so the waves won't toss them away. Will worries they might drown tied up, but Nick argues they're already on the edge of death. They fasten the cables to their waists. The next big wave knocks them off, but the cables keep them close and they climb up again. Another massive wave comes. Same result, they survive. A plane passes overhead, but once again, it doesn't see them. Despair starts creeping in. Will realizes they've been at sea for 24 hours and wonders why no one's come. As dawn breaks, visibility improves. Will unties himself and dives inside the boat looking for food. He emerges with a bag of pretzels and a drink. Then Will spots something far away that looks like land. Nick tries calling 911 and texting his wife, but the phone has no signal. He doubts what they're seeing, but will insist people can't hallucinate the same thing. It's worth a try. They untie themselves and swim toward it. Within minutes, the land vanishes and so does the boat. Surrounded only by endless water, they panic and try to find their way back. Finally, Nick reaches the boat again, followed by Will, who's exhausted. Nick holds him up. The storm begins to clear. Tornado's crew and the aircraft resume the search, now with working radar. After 30 hours at sea, Nick notices Will growing quiet. When he asks, Will says he's thinking about his own funeral, whether he'd even be there. Trembling, he laments that if he'd been married, his wife might have stopped him from going. Heartbroken, he tells Nick what message to relay to his parents if Nick survives. Before Nick can answer, Will starts feeling hot and tries to jump into the water. Nick grabs him tightly, but Will removes his life vest to break free. Another massive wave knocks them both down, and Will drifts away despite Nick pulling the cable with all his might. The third wave pushes him completely out of reach. Nick screams helplessly. He's now utterly alone. Back at the Coast Guard office, Timothy gets word the aircraft have returned without results, but he urges his team not to give up. As evening falls, Tornado's crew decides to turn back, though two men stay on deck, scanning the horizon a little longer. Nick's wife, losing all hope, leaves a long tearful message on his voicemail recalling their years together. His mother hugs her, comforting through shared grief. Hours later, Nick hears a sound and sees Tornado passing in the distance. They don't notice him. He refuses to give up, thinking of his family to stay strong. After nearly 42 hours at sea, Nick starts hallucinating about his friends' deaths. Just when all hope fades, he unties himself and lies flat on the boat, ready to surrender. At that very moment, Tornado spots him. They launch a rescue boat immediately. Captain Timothy receives the good news on radio and sends out a helicopter. The chopper drops a stretcher and lifts Nick safely from the ocean. Tornado's crew and the Coast Guard rejoice as medics begin treating his wounds. Timothy calls Nick's family to deliver the miracle news. Nick's parents and wife break down in relief, but the families of the three lost men aren't as fortunate. 6 months later, every time Nick goes near the water, he still hears his friends screaming for help. The story is based on an *** true event***. Despite days of searching, the other three men were never found and were declared lost at sea. Subscribe to this channel and support us. Thanks for watching.